Joining me live now is former Home Affairs Secretary Mike Pezzullo. Mike, welcome back. We missed you last week. Let's talk about what has happened in those intervening couple of days. There has been a lot of progress between Ukraine and Russia. We had the meeting in Geneva. We've got frustrations boiling over in Washington. But it would seem that Putin is most buoyed here. He feels like he's about to be rewarded for the aggression over the last 4 years. Do you see it that way?
Good morning, Laura. Yes, I do. And were Putin to be rewarded, as you've just seen him say in that package that you just played, he's saying, I will get what I want by any means available, including force of arms. Well, if he is rewarded in this way, particularly with territorial concessions to satisfy what he claims is rightfully Russia's legitimate interest here, then frankly there was no point in resolving the Second World War in the way that the world did by saying in future such military aggression or similar displays of military aggression will never be rewarded. What was the point of setting up the United Nations and the charter that underlies the United Nations, which principally says you don't change your borders through force of arms? Well, Vladimir Putin is just saying that's exactly what I'm going to do. If an agreement is struck and the Ukrainians have prevailed upon to accept it, which has Russia rewarded in this way, it'll be a capitulation on a par with the capitulation to Nazi Germany and fascist Italy in the 1930s, where they just kept saying, we're going to keep going, including through force of arms, until we get what we want.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary that it's been almost 4 years. What game is Trump playing here? Because he does, well, what has worked for him in the past is his unpredictability. Ironically, I would say as well, but we've had Witkoff, Rubio, they've all made, I think at times, curious public comments. Where is all this headed? Surely the United States wouldn't stand for rewarding Russia with land because of this aggression.
Well, on the face of it, Laura, it looks as though they might well be motivated to do so. The 28-point plan that emerged in the time since we last spoke was either leaked out of Washington or somehow disclosed out of Washington, and central to the 28-point plan, since been modified after the discussions in Geneva, was effectively the centrepiece of which was to accept Russia's claim over that territory. Now, there are other issues about the size of the Ukrainian armed forces and whether or not they could, down the track, join NATO. But the core of it was giving Putin what he wanted in terms of territory. Now, the plan's been modified, it's been walked back, the Europeans have become involved. To your question about what the United States is trying to achieve, or perhaps personally the President is trying to achieve, I think if we take a glass half full view first, I think the Americans are very concerned about an ongoing security commitment in Europe, which they've been involved in providing ever since the Second World War, the end of that war that we just spoke about. And it's very costly. So I think from one point of view, the American administration and a number of presidents have gone down this path, but Trump has gone down it the furthest, is really saying, Europe, you need to secure your own borders. And that then opens this question, Laura. What has Europe done? In the 4 years they've had, it's going to be 4 years come February, they should have built, if not the largest land force in the world, close to it. Their GDP is 10 times the size of Russia. They've got a larger population. By now, European leaders should have mobilised a very large conventional force, and France and the UK should have backstopped that with a significant improvement and enhancement of their nuclear capability. None of that has been done. So to some extent, the Americans have got some justice on their side in saying, if Europe's not going to be prepared to make sacrifices, why should we? But I think there's more to it than that. I think the overriding principle should be that territorial conquest through force of arms should be unacceptable, as it is under the UN Charter.
Yeah, the European point is a valid one, and you can sense Donald Trump's frustration. I mean,
yes,
we heard the NATO boss call him daddy. I guess that's what they've achieved. That's the most memorable thing to me over the last couple of years. But what has been pointed out in recent days is still Europe's reliance on Russian oil. That's got to be a critical part of this, doesn't it?
European reliance on Russian energy, both oil and gas.
Oil and gas.
A lack of a conventional force to deter further Russian incursions, whether further into Ukraine or potentially against other European members of NATO, and an inability, because of the mismatch in the relative nuclear arsenal between what Russia's got and what France and the UK have got, so leaving aside the American nuclear deterrent, all of those factors weaken Europe. They've had 4 years to get their house in order, and collectively, but also individually, they've been so consumed by domestic politics, by, if you like, the aspirations of their citizens to avoid sacrifices that are necessary in such a circumstance. When you've got a powerful, aggressive military power, a great power on your borders like Russia, you either turn your area into a fortress, or you say, look, one day we're going to take a risk here, but one day we might have to capitulate. This is as much about European weakness as it is about Russian aggression.
Let's quickly talk about aggression in our region, i.e. China, and what has happened in the last couple of weeks. We note that Xi Jinping and Donald Trump have had a telephone conversation. They're going to have reciprocal visits next year. I thought it was interesting in the readout from Trump that Xi Jinping saying, back to post-wartime era, talking about, China's ultimate goal of reunifying with Taiwan, but enter Japan into all of this. It's been clear that Japan is going to do some kind of deal with Taiwan, and the pushback against Japan has been quite something, hasn't it?
It has been, and I think President Xi Jinping is taking an early opportunity to try to box the Prime Minister, Takaichi, into her place, if I can use that term, by jumping on the first thing that she said publicly about the possibility of Japan becoming involved or having to defend itself in the context of a Taiwan contingency. All the reporting that I've read suggests that Xi Jinping is furious about her position and her preference to increase the size of their military further and to do it more rapidly than her predecessors were planning. Very unusual for the President of China to initiate these sorts of calls. From the reports that we've read publicly, at least, the call went for the best part of an hour, and it was focused almost exclusively, we understand, at least from the Chinese readout, on China asserting, a bit like Russia, very strongly, we can do this one of two ways. Taiwan is ours, we will get it, and it's critical to international peace and stability. What that's really code for, Laura, is saying, if I don't get what I want, I prefer not to use force of arms, but the message I think to take from the call is, I'm prepared, I, Xi Jinping, am prepared to use force of arms if I don't get what I want. So it's almost a mirror, different strategic circumstances, but also almost a mirror, as a matter of principle, to how the Russians are approaching Ukraine.
It's stunning to see what's going on right around the world at the moment, Mike, and compare it to what's being discussed at a domestic level. We don't seem to be, at least in the public debate, having big parliamentary debates, public discussions about national security at the moment.
No, and in a democracy, in one sense, Laura, that's actually a healthy thing, because in your family, my family, in families right around Australia, people are concerned about cost of living, the price of electricity, but more fundamentally, if they've got children, as we do, the prospects for our children, what kind of society are they going to grow up in. So that's entirely understood. In other countries, which have got more of a strategic frontier where they're abutting potential historical enemies or adversaries, there's a different consciousness. If you're in Finland, for instance, facing Russia, or if you're in the Philippines and you have the Chinese Navy and Coast Guard constantly butting up against your forces, your consciousness of these issues is very different. So distance protects us. However, in this connected world, that distance isn't going to protect us. It certainly disconnects us from these issues, but it's not going to protect us. You and I have spoken on quite a number of occasions throughout this year about the need for the government to lead a discussion, whether through a national security statement. I think a couple of weeks ago we talked about having something like an annual budget night that you have for the economy and the budget. We should have some kind of annual parliamentary debate on national security, because if dark things come, Laura, they'll come quickly. In other words, they'll have a slow build-up, then there'll be an increasing sort of intensification, and then it'll go off very quickly if things are going to go badly. And I've said to you on quite a number of occasions this year, I think we'll get to confrontation in the Pacific region, but not necessarily conflict. So I differentiate between confrontation and war. But if, God forbid, war was to come, regrettably, I don't think our population's going to be morally or psychologically prepared, simply because these issues are just so remote from everyday life.
Yeah, and as you say, it is a good mark of a great life here in Australia, but these things happen very slowly and then all at once. Mike, great to have you back this Friday. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Laura.